All right. We are calling this meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the flag salute as I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you. Let's roll right into roll call.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Pardon me.
Councilmember Woodard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Councilmember Payne Donovan. Is trying to log in. And Mayor Matsumoto Wright has asked to be excused.
Do I have a motion to excuse Mayor Wright?
Motion to excuse Mayor Wright.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Motion carries. Thank you. And we will hopefully hear from Councilmember Payne Donovan when he gets in. But otherwise, let's roll into public comment. Do we have any public comment? Anybody signed up?
No one has signed up in person. And if there's anyone in the online audience who would like to speak, I see Jamie English. You'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Hi. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure how this works or if I'm doing this right. I hope my camera's okay. I wanted to speak on the amending the I guess the rule of putting the utilities underground. Currently, I think the rule requires that if you
Jamie, can I interrupt you? This part of public comment is just general public comment, and then when we get to undergrounding utilities, we'll have a public hearing.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Very good. Thank you, Jamie. We'll look forward to hearing from you in momentarily. Anybody else?
That's the end of public comment.
All right, then public comment is closed. Let's move into the consent calendar. Does anybody wish to remove anything from consent calendar? Everything good? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Oh, sorry, there, yes. And by the way, Councilmember Payne Donovan is in. Hello.
Hello, and thanks for accommodating me on the Zoom. I apologize for the technical delay here.
Glad you're able to join us. Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion for the consent calendar?
Move to approve the consent calendar, items A through G.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? If not, let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar approved. Very good. Public hearing. So we're going to have a public hearing on the approval of undergrounding utilities ordinance. That is our community and economic development team. Come on up. Floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Wall and members of the council. My name is Jonathan Morales. I'm Associate Planner at the City of Mountlake Terrace, and I'm joined today with Christy Osborne, CD Director, and Matthew Gissel, Building Official. Last Thursday, February 2nd, we presented at an introduction session our proposed code amendments for undergrounding utilities. So today we are here for a public hearing for the proposed amendment. To recap, the intent of our proposed code amendments are to clarify references to undergrounding power and other wireline services for existing single-family dwellings and accessory structures. Currently in code, there's a lack of clarity in the existing language and in implementation. So the goal of these code amendments are to make it more efficient and provide more clarity around when a property triggers the requirement to go underground. Secondly, the goal is to ensure that life safety provisions are included and to provide for some exceptions. So as you know, the comprehensive plan is the city's guiding policy document. So Appendix E of our current comprehensive plan is an underground power strategy. This was approved by council in August of 2010 as part of the comp plan update process. And it was in response to a 2008 action step in the utilities element, which stated to develop a strategy by 2010 to encourage undergrounding of overhead lines in the town center and other areas where most appropriate. Also in the comprehensive plan, there are several policies. So there's 3 policies in our land use element. There's policy LU 1.12. In our utilities element, there's policy UT 2.2 and policy UT 2.3. We did reach out to Snohomish County PUD for some information as to undergrounding utilities. According to PUD, undergrounding requirements are jurisdiction specific. These are set by local jurisdictions through ordinances. PUD standard service delivery is through overhead lines, so they don't require undergrounding power, but they work closely with jurisdictions who do require that. The average cost for an existing single-family dwelling currently is approximately $4,000 to $10,000, and there is no charge for a single-family dwelling to upgrade an electrical service panel up to 200 amps. Anything above 200 amps is an additional $3.98 per amp. So currently in code, as it applies to existing single-family dwellings, undergrounding is required for new, replaced, relocated, upgraded, or extended electrical service provided to any property in any zone. Currently, our code interpretation is that this requirement is triggered through the movement of the electrical mast. This is not written anywhere in code, so with these proposed amendments, there will be more clarity as to when a single-family dwelling is required to underground. So currently, you can do a whole house remodel. If you're not moving the electrical mast, then you are not required to underground. And with that, did anyone go over this?
All right, to piggyback off that, so project improvement valuation is what the trigger mechanism that we base this on. Project improvement valuation for additions are determined by the applicable building code valuation schedule. That's in the International Code Council, the building evaluation data. An example of that, we had an addition a couple weeks ago that gave a valuation of $250,000 for that addition based on legislated value, which we go off of that valuation went down to $75,000. So all other construction valuation is based on average construction costs and our zip codes as determined by previous project, available building costs per square foot data. Kind of the same thing. We take down the low, take out the high, and find the medium. There's people who said I can do the whole job for nothing. Something fell off the back of the truck and I was able to use it. And other people are using the finest quality materials. We're just trying to get cost recovery on our inspections. So we're looking at medium, getting those valuations taken care of. So I have a couple examples, I believe. There we go. On unreinforced block homes, which are, there are several on Mountlake Terrace. The average valuation of those are about, on this particular one, is about $484,200. The structures assessed by Sonoma County assessors at $137,900, which means you could do a market improvement of that single-family residence up to $68,950. And that would be doing a remodel up to $68,000 and doing a new service change, which means new panel, new meter base. We have another example of a split entry, which is another popular home style in Mountlake Terrace. This one is valued at $617,500, with the house being assessed at $260,500, which means you could do a project improvement value of $130,000, $250,000. Same thing, they'd have to do $130,000 worth of work, as well as include modifying or changing this service to the single-family residence. So a cost scenario that we took from an actual project, the description of work was a full kitchen remodel, painting throughout the home, updated lighting throughout the home, new flooring throughout the home, 2 bathroom updates, adding a closet package, and that project evaluation was around $60,000. If this code was accepted, the valuation of the house was $189,000. The legislative value of the structure, that would allow them to do $94,500, which this valuation would be under. As you can see, they can do quite a bit of work to the single-family resident without triggering the undergrounding of the utilities. We also have an example of what it means to underground, where you have your meter base. Instead of going up to a mast where it'd be now, undergrounding is simply putting a conduit underneath the meter base, running it out to the right-of-way, and then having the PUD take it the rest of the way for that connection. The cost associated with undergrounding it from the meter base to the pole, the single-family resident would incur the cost on that from the electrician, and then the cost that Jonathan spoke about previously, that's for the utility company to run it the rest of the way and make the connections. We have a slight example here of what overhead versus underground is. Overhead, you can see the power going across, open in the air, connected to a mast. As we had the several winds, earlier, we actually did have a few of them fail, which ripped the meter base off of the house that had to be repaired. Undergrounding, you can see it goes off the meter base, straight underground, and either to a transformer or up the pole and a protected conduit to connect to the rest of the system. Again, the main reason we're doing this for life safety, we want to make sure that we're capturing the ones that, that we need to, as well as being able to have homeowners maintain their house in the safest way possible and replace electrical panels when needed. That's why we're going to have the provision for in the life safety situations that we would not require to go underground in certain zones. There are current homeowners right now that their panel is in a place that is not conducive to life safety, and they did have zinc scope panels. Unfortunately, because it's in a legal location, they cannot, to upgrade it, they have to comply with current codes, which means they couldn't put it back in the same place, which would mean that would require them to underground. So they are eagerly anticipating what this code change may do, so that way they could bring their house back into a safe standing by moving it to a safer location and doing the panel. That is all they're looking at doing in the next 3 years, is putting that in a safe location, which would allow them to do this without triggering the underground requirements.
Thank you, Matthew. So, give me 1 second.
I probably mixed them all up for you.
Don't know where it is, but
Apologies.
sorry about that. So with our proposed code amendments, we're proposing that undergrounding utilities would be required when an existing single-family dwelling is proposing a remodel and is modifying the electrical service with a project improvement value that is greater than 50% of the assessed value of the single-family dwelling. Again, that's the market improvement line item that's located in the assessor's website for the property. Underground utilities is required in all town center zones, except in the case of a life safety situation. So this is a new provision that we're incorporating into our proposed amendments to capture needing to bring a property into compliance due to life safety hazards. And then, as is currently written in code, undergrounding required for all new developments. So as far as the proposal for doing a remodel and also modifying electrical service, the project improvement value accumulates over a consecutive 3-year period. So at any point of doing improvements on your property over a 3-year period, and you hit that 50% benchmark while also modifying the electrical service, that's when the trigger will require you to underground. This is designed to be less restrictive than what is currently in code and provide more clarity for implementation. Finally, again, adding the life safety provision. So the code provisions do not apply to a homeowner who simply wants to modify their electrical service, if that's the only scope that they're wanting to do. And vice versa, if someone's just wanting to do a remodel and they're not touching the electrical service, then this proposed code amendments do not apply to them. So just a recap of some of the examples that we looked at as we put together these proposed amendments. So City of Arlington requires undergrounding for any project that is above 50% of the total value of the existing building or structure. This would require the requirement to go underground. City of Shoreline requires undergrounding for residential remodels and additions where the total value of the project exceeds 50% of the assessed value of the property and improvements and involves the relocation of the service connection to the structure. And City of Edmonds requires undergrounding for where there's an existing above-ground private utility service connecting to underground common utilities that is being rebuilt or relocated. And in all jurisdictions, they require underground for all new developments as well. In addition to our proposed code amendments, we're also proposing to add new definitions to Chapter 1915 of our zoning code. This is to be consistent with the new code language. So the first definition is assessed value of a single-family dwelling. Life safety situation. So with this, the building official or CED director would be able to qualify what is considered a life safety situation. So this is on a case-by-case basis. And then project improvement value, as Matthew went over. So just a rundown of where we've been. We've presented to Planning Commission, held a public hearing at Planning Commission where a recommendation was forwarded to Council to adopt the proposed amendments. We went through City Council, 2 work sessions and a public hearing on December 5th. Today we're back for another public hearing. And as required by state law, we did request expedited review by the Department of Commerce. So this was completed on December 1st, 2022. And we did complete our SEPA determination of non-significance. And this was completed November 4th. And so with that, staff recommends that the council adopts the proposed ordinance to amend section 1505-330 and add new definitions to chapter 1915 of the zoning code. Thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. We do need to open a public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move to open public hearing.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Public hearing is open. Do we have anybody signed in to testify or any?
No one has signed in to testify.
Do we have any written testimony submitted?
No written testimony.
Okay, anybody online?
Anyone in the online audience who would now like to speak about undergrounding utilities? All right, Jamie, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I do have a question about asking questions. In this 5 minutes, can I ask questions and have them answered?
Sure, we'll allow that.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify. So I was concerned when I read all the paperwork and the examples and everything that was just presented. My concern was, so I'm a homeowner and the home that I live in is not brand new. It's pretty old, built in the 50s. And what concerned me is that if something were to happen where if there was a fire or flood and I had to do projects that might be considered home improvement, but really it was more of a repair, like if I had to redo the kitchen due to a flood or a fire, or the roof or the siding or something like that, and it went up to the half of the market value that was explained. And then I ended up having to tack on the cost of running the utilities underground when it wasn't really my plan in the first place to spend a large amount of money to remodel my house. And so I guess my clarifying question is, that's a concern and a question, if that could be clarified. Could that possibly happen to people? And also, when you explain as moving your mast, is that the same as modifying electrical service? So we have a home with a carport. If we wanted to enclose that and make it a living space, we wouldn't be moving the mast, but we probably would be adding electricity to part of our home. Would that trigger the need to put the electrical wires underground?
Good questions. Who wants to take the lead on that?
Thank you for your question. So the first one is, if you had a fire and the legislative value did add up to 50% over for redoing the work, including the electrical, then the electrical would be required to go underground. Depending on how bad it was, it would just be based on legislative value. So that would be a trigger mechanism to underground the utilities if you did have to do extensive work to the house, as well as modify the electrical. On the carport, one of the reasons we're doing this is because electrical panels can only go in very specific locations. So if in enclosing the carport, you wanted to put a closet somewhere, the electrical panel would restrict where you could actually put closets, things of that nature, because an electrical panel cannot be in a closet. It has a certain amount of open space in front of it. So as of right now, if you did want to enclose the carport and the electrical was going to be moved in any way, it would be required to go underground no matter what. If this code was adopted, then you'd be able to move the electrical panel wherever it best fit your project. And as long as there wasn't additional work that added up to that 50% of the assessed value of your single family residence, you could move it to where you felt it was safe and worked best for your family without requiring to go underground.
So you're talking about moving the mast, that is modifying the electrical service?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So if he goes back to slide 1, they said the code actually says anytime you modify it, there was a previous building official determination in trying to understand that language that defined it as the trigger mechanism as moving the mast. And that's where the electrical enters the house from the roof line.
Right. So if we were to do an addition and did not need to move the mast, and that addition, even though that room needed to be wired and it was less than the $50,000, which is 50% of our market value, so it would not trigger it.
You're talking about currently or in the adoption of this?
Or I guess this is clear. If this is adopted and we end up going over 50%, but we don't move the mast, will we need to do the electrical underground?
Then you would not be required to go underground. It's two trigger mechanisms. You have to do both of them.
Both of them. Okay.
Correct.
Because when we did have an electrician come out and do a little bit of work and we got permits and everything for it and we had talked
Jamie?
to them. Yes.
Sorry, that's been your 5 minutes.
Oh, darn. Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
pulling
you.
a permit.
I would like to say thank you very much for this presentation and the opportunity to ask questions, though.
Thank you.
Yes, good questions, Jamie. Thank you for joining us. And if you do have follow-up questions, feel free to contact staff. I'm sure they'd be happy to work with you further.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additional comments?
Is there anyone else in the online audience who would like to ask about this agenda item? Going once, going twice? Nope, that's the end of public testimony.
All right, thank you very much. Do any council members have any questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Jamie, thank you for your question. I want to go ahead and make sure you got your answer, so I'll rephrase it here for myself. So I have a carport. We've adopted this plan. I want to enclose the carport, and of course, I want electricity in there that doesn't currently exist. But I'm going to leave the mast, which in my case is outside of our building or of our home. I'm not going to move that, but I might move the panel because I just think it's in a better situation due to the new configuration. I would not have to underground, or I would have to underground.
Under the new code provisions, if you adjust the service to a new location, including the overhand mast. So the mast location is the old trigger mechanism. That will no longer be it. So there's new code provisions. When you update the service, you have to have a service disconnect on the outside of the building. So that's going to provide you with a new meter base, all new connections. So if you're over the 50% value and moving your main electrical panel going into the house, that would trigger underground requirements.
Good, all right. Any other, yes, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for being here again tonight and for coming and presenting to us as many times as you have to try to ensure that we understand this very complex issue and all of the work, I think, particularly around the life safety issues to try to ensure that there is a mechanism that allows people to make those changes more readily. My one question was, I think it came up in one of our previous conversations, but if it came up tonight, I missed it. That 50% number of assessed value, there was a reason behind that, right? That has some kind of historical context or precedent in our code, right? Can you just speak to that so folks kind of understand that piece?
The reason we use the 50% is because a 50% is what's typically used in code provisions, not only here in the city, but regionally and actually across the United States. A 50% is a threshold that's used to what's called grandfather an existing structure or use, et cetera. And so the thought behind that is if you're going above that threshold, then you would typically have to comply with whatever recent code provisions are in place. So is there new zoning or is there new building codes? And so that way we ensure that people update things accordingly. So the 50% is consistent with what's already in our local code and really what's kind of a recognized standard in building and planning is that threshold. So we just wanted to remain consistent. I would just add to Jamie's question, based on the information that we gave, if she wanted to redo her carport and upgrade her electrical based on project value, I highly doubt that undergrounding utilities would be required in her particular situation. I would find that hard to believe when we've seen case scenarios of where people have done a lot more work, including upgrading a kitchen, which is typically very expensive, bathrooms, painting, et cetera, that didn't even trip, in most cases, a 50% threshold. So I have no doubt if somebody wants to do some modifications in that respect and provide electrical service to that they're going to be just fine. And that's the intent of what we're trying to do here, is make our code provisions more understandable and less restrictive for the existing single-family property owner in the city, that we don't want to discourage people from improving their properties.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councilmember Sonmore. Okay. All right, then if there's no, and I want to make sure, Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just wanted to quickly thank staff again. I know we already done this a couple of times, but for my part as a recently departed Planning Commission member, you've done great work socializing this sort of rather complex area of building code and public policy. So kudos for your patience and your tact in explaining all this stuff. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right, if there's no further questions, we need to close the public hearing. Do I have a motion to, Councilmember Sonmore?
I move to close public hearing.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, the public hearing is now closed. We now need to put a motion on the table. Councilmember Sonmore.
Move for City Council to adopt the ordinance as presented and recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing, Councilmember Woodard.
Just so that we put it in here, and really it's not to stall this vote as much as to be thinking about, if we affirm it, unintended consequences, which is just really a message, I think, to our city as a whole. I keep thinking about the call before you dig. And so if we're moving towards this wonderful world, I believe, of underground, just to kind of reiterate that we should be messaging that out. I don't think that people remember that as often as they should. And this is definitely not the thing you want your shovel to hit. So in that regard, I don't want you hitting a gas line either, but just kind of recognizing that as we move more towards this, I think, inevitable approach, that we don't forget that there are unintended consequences, and just, again, the city being responsible, I think, for that if we're going to be making codes that say, let's go underground.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmembers. Woodard, any other comments? Very good. We'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Very good. Thank you for all your work. Appreciate your patience as you're working through this with us. Okay, next is City Manager's report. I'm sorry, we have an update on the South County Fire RFA potential annexation process is next up, and I assume the City Manager will be taking, or Assistant City Manager Stephen Clifton taking the lead on that.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For the record, Stephen Clifton, Assistant City Manager. Over the last couple of years, the City Council has on occasion discussed the topic of future fire service and emergency services for the city post expiration of the current contract with South County Fire. More recently, on January 3rd and January 12th, I presented to the City Council some of the background and some of the complexities related to the expiring of the existing contract and some of the options available for the city council to consider, et cetera. So tonight I'm just going to give a brief update and just a brief overview for people who have not watched the presentations on the 3rd and the 12th. And then also more specifically, some of the updates post adoption of a resolution requesting annexation to South County Fire. So on January 3rd, I presented that the city is at a crossroads in the delivery of fire and emergency medical services. The reason for that is the current 20-year agreement between Mountlake Terrace and South County Fire expires at the end of 2024. As I indicated on January 3rd, South County Fire has formally notified the city that they do intend to terminate the interlocal agreement effective December 31st, 2024. And a new agreement will need to be negotiated and would include new terms. Specifically, the city would be required to pay what other residents are paying within South County Fire area. And at parity, that's a few $1 million more than what we're currently paying for 2023. South County Fire has also stated, as I just mentioned, that parity means it will cost up to 80% to twice the amount starting January 1st, 2025. A new arrangement for providing fire and EMS services must be secured by the end of 2024. On January 12th, I highlighted that the City of Linwood and Fire District 1 approved a plan creating and funding the South Snohomish County Fire and Rescue Regional Fire Authority. And on April 26, 2022, 76% of Mill Creek voters voted to approve joining South County Fire Regional Fire Authority. On April 25th, the City of Briar residents will vote on whether to annex into South County Fire, RFA. And that same evening, the City Council considered options as presented by myself, and they included reestablishing the city's own fire department. I did mention that would be cost prohibitive for a number of reasons outlined on January 12th. There's another option is contracting with another city. Like I mentioned before, Linwood is now a part of South County Fire, as is Mill Creek. Edmond's contract doesn't expire until 2030. And the city of Shoreline, another neighbor of ours, they actually communicate with King County Emergency Response. So our ability to partner with them is not going to work as well. We can also negotiate a new contract for services with South County Fire prior to the end of 2024. That would only be necessary if the voters say no to an annexation to South County Fire. So on January 12th, the council did approve Resolution 869 requesting annexation into South Snohomish County Regional Fire Authority. You've seen this slide before, but I inserted it only for those who might be wanting to view the slides on the website. And so this contains all the information that I presented to you on January 3rd and 12th, and it's just a Snohomish County Fire overview. And this is what I presented earlier as well. The city pays South County Fire using general fund revenues, including all revenue from the city EMS levy and additional contributions from other city revenues. For example, the general fund. Currently, we're paying about $1.7 million out of the general fund for 2023 services. I did mention that the estimated cost for 2023, when you add the base rate plus LEOFF, that's LEF, it's law enforcement officers, firefighters, medical benefits, office supplies, snow 911 dispatch, and that totals about $3.7 million. The amount that we are paying, the city is paying in 2023 is a 17% increase above what was charged in 2022. And in 2024, the forecasted increase is 4.5% above this year. And I did highlight a couple of times that this underscores the volatility or the uncertainty that the city faces in the future, because we really don't ever know what the next year's increases are going to be. There's also the South County Fire retroactive pay, which is due the first quarter of 2023, and that's an amount of $216,000. Annexation into South County Fire, if this were to occur, there would be a cost shift in how South County Fire receives revenue to pay for services. Residents would pay directly to South County Fire via the county's assessor versus paying the city via the county assessor. Existing fire and EMS services are maintained, and South County Fire has stated they intend to move more resources to Fire Station 16. For the public, I'm sorry, Fire Station 19. For the public, that's the station located within the city of Mountlake Terrace. It also would help stabilize the city's property tax rates and move the city's budget towards longer-term stability because, as I mentioned before, the uncertainty as to how much fire service might cost in the future would go away. South County Fire would continue to operate a community paramedic program to respond effectively to low acuity 911 calls, in addition to conducting robust public education and fire prevention programs. A key part of the annexation discussion is to confirm whether the city will mitigate some of the impact of additional fire taxes on city voters, and if so, by how much and for what purpose. The net effect on taxpayers is based on what the City Council decides to do for year 2024 and beyond. Janella, myself, our finance director, myself, and also Bob Eastman and Leslie Hine from South County Fire have been working on the financials related to a potential annexation. We feel pretty good about the numbers that in the spreadsheets that have been created, and we'll be presenting some numbers to the city's Snohomish County Fire Committee soon, and hopefully on Wednesday. The price of fire services in Mountlake Terrace will be considerably higher in 2024 than in 2023, so that means it'll be extremely difficult for Mountlake Terrace to make annexation revenue neutral to the voters, absent major reductions in other city operations, staffing, and/or programs. And the same was true in 2022 for the city of Mill Creek. City of Mill Creek, their property owners actually ended up paying about an extra $31 per month to annex into the fire district. One key issue would be whether the city should retain ownership of Fire Station 19. Typically, cities transfer their fire assets to the new service provider, subject to change if agreements are terminated. Mountlake Terrace currently has full ownership interest in Station 19, and it actually sits on the same parcel of land that the police station and the city hall sit on. So this is the real reason we're here tonight. Mayor Matsumoto Wright asked the question, where are we at in the overall process last Thursday? And so this is to kind of show the city council where we're at. And step one is approving a resolution requesting annexation. The council did that on January 12th. And we did send the resolution to South County Fire on January 13th. Step two is terms and conditions of annexation. The city and the RFA are currently discussing terms and conditions necessary to effectuate the annexation. That's taking place now until February 15th. And when I say city and RFA, I'm really talking about the staff for both organizations. The step 1 and 2 are highlighted in yellow because those are the steps that have been completed or we're working on. Steps 3A, B, C, D, E, and F all relate to documents that the council and the South County Commission are going to have to consider as part of this annexation effort. So the pre-annexation agreement, this is used to help implement the RFA plan and to assure a smooth and seamless transition of services and responsibilities from the city and South County Fire. The pre-annexation agreement has been prepared, it's been reviewed by myself, has been sent to our city attorney. We have agreed on most terms, and the ownership of Fire Station 19 is referenced in all of these agreements that I'm about to discuss. And it's really the only item at this time that we haven't been able to agree on exactly how the station will be owned. Not how it will be used, but how it will be owned. So that's something we're working on. We have another meeting scheduled this week, and we're hoping to get to some resolution because all these documents have to come before the council at least by the 16th of this month. The RFA plan, this is amended and restated plan for South Snohomish County Fire and Rescue Regional Fire Authority. This is the plan that includes references to all the entities that are served either by contract or who are a part of the annexation, and it kind of lays out the terms related to each one of those entities. And so that has to be approved by the commission, also by the council as well. The use agreement establishes terms by which the South County Fire will exclusively use portions of Station 19 while maintaining use of the ground floor by the city of Mountlake Terrace. The police department has made it very clear they want full use of the existing ground floor as they're using it today. South County Fire said that works for us. Also, we do have some equipment in there that's tied to our IT that will be maintained and stay with the city as well as far as using it, and it's on the ground floor. So South County Fire is okay with that, so we're just kind of ironing out the details related to how the building's going to be used. And tomorrow, staff from each entity are going to be meeting tomorrow afternoon to discuss the specifics related to how the building's going to be used. Because one thing I want to make sure is when we bring this to the City Council and to the South County Fire Commission, we want to make sure that we understand every detail on how the building's going to be used. The next is the Mountlake Terrace resolution with attached proposition number and ballot title. This is going to be requesting Snohomish County Auditor place a proposition on the special election ballot to be held on April 26th. And so I have prepared a resolution. I'm preparing the ballot title. The proposition number will be assigned. And so that is underway as well. And explanatory statement. This is a narrative describing the purpose of the annexation. That'll go in the voter's pamphlet. I actually have, I have prepared that. I've sent that to our city attorney. She's okay with it as it's been written, but it also has to be reviewed by the county and the Attorney General's office. So that's something that still has to take place before it's actually placed on the ballot. We did use Mill Creeks as an example, so we're fairly confident that the county and auditor's office and also the AG's office at the state level will be okay with it, because our situation is very similar to Mill Creek's. Also, the pro-con committee, we need to solicit for residents to participate on either committee, and we really need to solicit now, as in tomorrow. And so I have issued, not issued, but I prepared a press release. We're ready to put that out there on social media, and also a press release to MLT News, et cetera, and hoping that people respond and want to serve on both those committees, either committee, not both committees. So, step 4 is a SEPA review. South County Fire is preparing a SEPA checklist as we speak, and so they should have that completed by the time this is placed on the ballot. Resolution adopting the RFA plan. Snohomish County Fire Board needs to adopt a resolution amending the plan. We're thinking that could take place on February 14th, and the reason that that date would work well is it would give the City Council certainty that South County Fire Commission is okay with all of the agreements that you'll be considering as well. And those include the pre-annexation agreement, as I discussed before, the RFA plan, the use agreement, the resolution, and also the explanatory statement ballot measure. So all of those will go to South County Fire, and then we hope to have those before you on the 16th so that you can review those, consider those, and possibly place those on the agenda for the 21st, which is the date the council will need to take action in order for us to submit it to Snohomish County Auditor's Office on or before Friday the 24th. We then need to transmit the resolution, the pro-con committee appointments, and explanatory statement to the county elections office on or before February 24th. Public outreach obviously needs to occur. We will prepare frequently asked questions and post to the city's website. We're fortunate because Mill Creek was a very similar situation, and they actually put together a Q&A webpage. And a lot of the information on that webpage is applicable to our situation as well, albeit we'll need to revise some of the specifics just to make sure that it's tailored towards Mountlake Terrace. On April 25th, that's when the special election would occur. And if that is successful, the annexation effective date is August 1st, 2023. And new RFA taxes and fees for fire, EMS, fire benefit charge imposed in Mountlake Terrace would begin on January 1st, 2024. And some of the preliminary terms that South County Fire staff and City of Mountlake Terrace staff have discussed are transport fees. The RFA will be entitled to bill and collect for transport fees related to transporting originating within the city. The city currently receives remitted transport fees from the RFA that originate within the city limits. So they collect the transport fees from the insurance companies, typically, of those who are transported. They remit those back to the city. We use that to pay for the contract. Instead, what will happen is the transport fees will go directly to then South County Fire instead of coming through us before we pay them. So it's more of a direct route. So nothing really changes except for how the money is transmitted. Liabilities commencing on annexation date August 1st, the RFA shall assume the periodic fire-related payment obligations of the City of Mountlake Terrace interlocal agreement with Snow 911. Yes.
Sorry, we have a question. Councilmember Sommer?
Stefan, can I ask, you said we pay for that for our fire. I know it's a portion. About how much do we get right now from the transport fees?
It's about 400 plus a year.
400,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And by 400, I should say 400,000 for the public. So,
It looks like we have one more question from Councilmember Donovan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And Stefan, I appreciate the conversation around the transport fees. I'm just curious about practices in the fire district or the RFA and transport for those residents who do not have insurance, and basically, to cut to the chase, like, are they balance billing folks who might be transported? I've some familiarity with this issue in previous professional settings, and just want to make sure that we understand what the impact would be to those uninsured or underinsured residents of our city.
Thank you for the question. I will run that past South County Fire, and we'll get an answer to you.
Very good. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Any other questions before we move on to liabilities? Any questions on transport fees? If not, carry on.
Okay. Don't worry about the interruptions. Feel free to ask me a question anytime it's on your mind. Actually, that probably works better that way. So the nice thing is they would take over the payment to Snow 911 not on January 1st of 2024, but on August 1st of 2023, the effective date of annexation. So that'd be 4 months ahead of when they actually start collecting taxes and for that service. City obligations under LEF, law enforcement, firefighters, 1, retiree medical, shall be transferred to the Regional Fire Authority also upon annexation date, so that's August 1st as well, including any long-term care policies maintained by the city. So they've actually agreed to that. The RFA shall release the City of Mountlake Terrace from any unpaid amounts owing related to retroactive increases in direct staff personnel under paragraph 4.1.3 F of their interlocal agreement for fire and emergency medical services, and they will assume payment of retroactive pay, which is due from the city the first quarter of 2023. And I mentioned earlier that's about $216,000. The RFA to pay all utilities, water, sewer, cable, electricity, et cetera, necessary to service Fire Station 19, subject, of course, to reimbursement from the city for utilities used in our exclusive use area. That's the ground floor of the existing fire station. But we also have discussed installing separate meters, which would make the billing a lot cleaner, a lot easier for each entity. And the city would continue paying year 2023 contract amount that we had expected to pay for this year because South County Fire won't begin collecting until January 1st, 2024. So we at least have to pay for that service that they're providing through the end of this year. Before then, we no longer have to do so. That's all assuming that the voters say yes. So that concludes my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions from the council. And if I can't, I will contact Janella or contact Bob at South County Fire and get those to you.
Very good. Thank you, Stefan, this is a great overview and presentation. Appreciate it. Can you be sure to forward this on to Mayor Matsumoto Wright so that she has the answers to her questions, particularly on the timeline? And obviously, we have some important decisions to make coming up here in the next 2 weeks. So we'll have one more presentation and discussion opportunity on the 16th, and then making a final decision to move this forward to the ballot on the 21st. Do we have any other questions or discussion on this topic? Councilmember Payne Donovan, thank you.
Thank you once more, Mayor Pro Tem. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. Stefan, follow-up question on the I guess the fire station ownership question. Is there any conversation about sort of future needs and sort of lifespan of that structure? I'm just thinking about, in the coming decades, understanding that the town center is bound to look quite different and have a lot more residents in it, and with different building types, much taller buildings, et cetera, as you well know. Just wondering about the structure itself, and then any like adjacent land use needs for any sort of expansion. I don't know if that's even needed, but just wondering if you could speak to about the structure and then sort of future capacity needs for Station 19.
Yes, we have talked about both the maintenance and the long-term needs of the building. The South County Fire has agreed to pay for all the maintenance related to the structure. So if there were any issues related to roofing or any other maintenance-related items, South County Fire would be paying for those. As far as potential expansion, at this time there aren't any plans to do so in the immediate future. However, as you said, in the future, should Town Center develop to its fullest potential, then there may be a need to expand it, but then they would be subject to submitting permits to the city like any other applicant would be required to do. And we would work closely with them to make sure that any kind of expansion respects what's occurred on the Civic Campus as far as redevelopment.
Great.
Good.
Thank you. And a quick follow-up on my earlier question around transport fees. I'm all for the RFA, and the city collecting bills or bills of those who have insurance, but want to make sure that we're understanding policy and practices that might fall on our more vulnerable folks who are uninsured. I know that the state is and the federal government haven't come to consensus on balance billing for emergency transport, and want us to be able to have that in our thinking as we move forward.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Payne Donovan. City Manager had some comments, and then Councilmember Sonmore has some additional. All right, we'll go with the City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. Also in response to Councilmember Payne Donovan's question, while there may not be discussion of expanding the facility, Fire Chief has very explicitly talked about expanding the service. So to deal with the growth of the city and the growth in service calls for service, there is a proposal on his part that there would be a fairly immediate increase in the number of personnel assigned to the station, which has a direct result, of course, of responsiveness. And just to comment, Assistant City Manager Clifton is doing an excellent job of representing the city and working with the fire district in meeting this very aggressive timeline of putting this together in order to meet these deadlines. He did mention the similarity with the city of Mill Creek and the fact that there's messaging that we can efficiently utilize that they've already done, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. One thing I will remind the council that Mill Creek, while it very recently approved the annexation, and while it did so with a very healthy margin, It's actually an example of a city where they were changing service providers, which is a much bigger change. For Mountlake Terrace, what we're doing is we're moving the form of governance over, but we're not changing the service provider. So the same agency that has served the city for a long time will continue. So in some ways, it's a less dramatic shift than Mill Creek. And so if Mill Creek was so successful, I don't see why this city would not be.
Very good. Thank you, City Manager. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Stefan, for coming back and continuing to do all of the extensive work, and to the entire committee who has been working and kind of moving this forward. Very appreciative. I'm very appreciative, I think, in helping me to better understand, to Andrew's point, about kind of the increase in service. I know I've had some questions around timing and whether or not it was in residents' best interest to move forward more quickly, and really appreciate better understanding the potential service impacts and the increased service that come through moving forward with this, outside of the, dealing with the fact that we need a solution longer term regardless of that. And so really do want to just express my appreciation there. I guess I did have a question, because we haven't talked about kind of the cost recovery piece. We haven't talked about kind of, and you mentioned that in your presentation, but there are different ways we could potentially go forward, and we haven't had those conversations and have a very short timeline. I guess I'm just curious, are we having those conversations the night we are voting? I guess, how are we going to approach that to make sure that we get to a place that we can meet this very aggressive timeline?
Well, one thing that Bob, myself, and Janella and Andrew spoke about is not getting ahead of the city's RFA committee. And so that's why we wanted to make sure that if we were going to bring them financial numbers and what this is going to cost the typical, homeowner, we wanted to make sure we felt very comfortable with the numbers that we've created in a spreadsheet. And so we've gone over that thing a couple of times, and those weren't ready to submit tonight, but we will be for the RFA committee.
Okay, so we will have those then at our next work session, with the idea that we will have some time to have a good conversation about that before it coming back on the 21st or whatever.
On the 16th, during the work session, is when we'll be able to spend a lot of time really going through all of the agreements, the plan, the spreadsheet, the numbers, all of that. But preceding that, we wanted to make sure that the RFA committee had some time to really just to specifically focus on addressing the financial aspect of this, and then they can make perhaps a recommendation to the full council.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you so much.
And our RFA committee is meeting, as Stephen mentioned, later this week, I believe Wednesday. Councilmember Woodard, Councilmember Sonmore, and Councilmember McCardle will all be at the meeting, and so that would be the next step in this process.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion? I see Councilmember Payne Donovan still has his hand up. Are you?
No, just slow in the draw. Pardon me.
Very good. All right. Thank you. If there is no further discussion, Stephen, thank you so much. Great job. Really appreciate you taking the lead. Also want to thank our RFA committee and all the work that you guys are doing in preparation to bring this before council. We do, as pointed out, have some important decisions to make us, and should be a good discussion on the 16th. And by the way, 16th is going to be a heavy agenda. We're also going to be reviewing city manager candidates that evening as well, and potential for further discussion. And we will all be coming back from Olympia. And so, by the way, do we have an updated schedule on our meeting times for with representatives and senators in Olympia yet? Yeah, so if we can get that out to council so we're all ready for that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, let's move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Chairman, members of the council. And again, I will, at the risk of being redundant here, will advise the council that Assistant City Manager Clifton is just is doing an all-out effort including a lot of weekend time putting together a complicated relationship with the fire district. But I think it's all in the best interest of the city, and he's representing us well. And I thank him for that. In regards to the city manager process that you just mentioned a moment ago, Mayor Pro Tem, that is on schedule and moving forward. And the plan, as mentioned before, is to present in executive session recommendations on the 16th to the council. The recruiter is putting those recommendations together, and at that point, the council will decide with what number of candidates to move forward and which candidates would become finalists. I would anticipate a day or two after the 16th, we would be able to publicize for the community and for the staff and for others who those finalists are that the council has selected. And then that on the 3rd and 4th of March, that first Friday and first Saturday, there would be a public reception. There would be tours for the candidates, especially those who are from out of town. There would be panel discussions with panels of the council's choosing in terms of key stakeholders, boards and commission members, department directors, and others. And last but not least, there would be the interviews with the council itself, either in open session or in executive session. State law allows the council to do it either way. So that's on a fast track for hopefully a successful conclusion on March 4th, which is only a couple of weeks away. I also wanted to mention the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funding that we've talked about a number of times, and as recently as last Thursday, our schedule now with all the other things we're working on is to bring that discussion in a workshop format, or perhaps even a retreat format, but March 2nd, which is in between the busy meeting of the 16th and the interview date of the 4th. So the staff is still putting together some recommendations for council to consider, and I know council members have some of their own issues and programs that they want to consider, so that's moving forward. I did mention last week that Congresswoman Del Benet is visiting the city on the 17th of this month, and so there will be a walk and talk tour of the Main Street Town Center project, followed by a reception in the afternoon. So her staff is working with city staff and would, of course, very much like to engage all members of the council who are available on the 17th to join in that. And then last but not least, last week I participated in a meeting with the administration in the city of Shoreline and the city of Linwood, both regarding the Sound Transit schedule. There had been some discussion about what could be a lapse in the proposed schedule, not so much for construction of this extension from Northgate to Linwood, which includes Mountlake Terrace, but the operation in the summer of 2024 due to perhaps inability of certain maintenance facilities to service trains, or due perhaps to an increase in new service on the east side in the Bellevue-Redmond area. That is not going over very well with this community because we were promised service at a certain time. And so there was a fairly robust discussion where all three cities, which include, we do have a Sound Transit board member in the form of the mayor of Linwood, who is a very active participant in the meeting I'm describing. But the suggestion was made that there be a joint letter from all three cities, perhaps within the next week or so, to the Sound Transit board, just to let Sound Transit know in no uncertain terms that the expectation of this community along the I-5 corridor north of Northgate is expecting service at the soonest possible time. There was some talk about trains at 8-minute intervals instead of 4-minute intervals, which is a lessening of service, but at least it's service. So I think the position we're taking is some service is better than no service, and a delay is just not something that's very acceptable. So More to come on that. You'll certainly be seeing a draft letter as it gets put together. But I was very pleased that all three cities are of a like mind. And as I meet separately with Sound Transit staff, I think that the staff is actually receptive to that kind of pressure, if you will, because they'd like to keep this project on track as well. So Sound Transit, more to come on that. And unless there are questions for me, that would conclude my report.
Very good. Thank you. Andrew, any questions of the city manager? Yes, Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you for entertaining me once more, Mayor Pro Tem. Andrew, has there been any outreach to the city of Seattle, even those council members or the city of Seattle council members who represent their northern sections that would be served by Linwood Link and or other regional cities? I'm thinking of, say, Edmonds, who has a lot of sort of nexus with accessing the Linwood and Mountlake Terrace stations as sort of signatories to a joint letter that you described.
Yes, not so much in terms of signing the joint letter, but in terms of the process of communicating our message. There was quite a bit of mention of allies, if you will, in the city of Seattle, and the fact that they would certainly support us. I also became aware that from South Sound in the Pierce County area, the Pierce County executive apparently at the Sound Transit Board emphatically supported the mayor of Linwood's suggestion that the schedule under no terms would be slowed down. So I do think we have allies beyond our borders, if that answers your question.
Very good. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, discussion before we move on? Seeing none, let's move into the council liaison reports, starting with Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Let's see if I can power through this. On the 25th, I joined Homage, which, if you're not familiar with Homage, they are a local organization that works with senior services. They do a lot of great work with our seniors. They convened a number of, they called it a lunch with leaders, so different sectors to come together to talk about what we can do for our seniors. So that's my message, to remind us that I think it's in our interest, if we haven't done so already, to extend an invitation to our Mountlake Terrace Senior Center Director, to come and just greet us. I'm not sure if we have done that yet, or if we actually made that a formal request, but I would hope to see her involved in this conversation the next time. On the 26th, I know you all know I work with Volunteers of America. We went down to Olympia, which is just to say I had an opportunity to spend some time on a different topic, but they know I'm a council member, and so it was great to see our 32nd district colleagues down there representing us and fighting for us, and so wanted to extend a thank you to them for entertaining us that day. On the 28th, we had a wonderful Ivy League outing, which is just to say we are doing amazing work, and Ivy League now has 2 council members who are officially a part of them, and I thought a third. Maybe we'll get that third one soon. I'm looking down at you, Councilmember Murray. So in that regard, Councilmember Payne Donovan, congratulations. Also a very active Ivy Leaguer. On the 30th and 31st, of course, I was with all of us, picking, as it would turn out, Councilmember Payne Donovan, but again, just wanted to reiterate how humbling it was to have that many of our residents interested in joining us here on this side of the dais, and did wonderful, excellent interviewing skills and just sharing their passion and why they would want to be with us, and that in our heart of hearts, we hope that you continue that passion and find a space for it. We have a lot of openings coming up on commissions and boards, and as we just heard, RFA, you can join the pro or the con side of this conversation. That might be a nice fit for you as well. Moving further, on the 1st, I will just pause and say, welcome to Black History Month. I don't know that we did a proclamation or if you have to do those every time, but I'm proclaiming it. And what I did was I went down to Seattle, Seattle City Club, actually had they're a nonprofit that brings together a number of different wonderful conversations from local leaders. And we had from the 44th, Senator John Lovick, as well as Representative April Berg, and they had a conversation as well with some gentlemen representing the immigrant communities immigrant communities, but it was just a good chance to be down there. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that as well, as I saw at least one of my colleagues down there, as well as we had a colleague from Edmond City Council down there, so that was also awesome. On the 2nd, we had our study session, and then this past weekend on the 4th, I had the awesome opportunity to join the Edmond School District Black Lives Matter Month of Action. We did a reading, we read children's books. They put it together, it was a wonderful, here at our local library. We had myself as a reader, we had 2 of our DEI commissioners as readers, and then we had some other local leaders join in that conversation as well from Verdant. It comes to mind, and there was just other folks that were also engaged. If you're interested in that, you can see that online. And then that next day on Sunday, to our west, Edmonds, they did another edition of Black in Edmonds. Just another powerful conversation about experiences here in our region. And of course, we share the lake. So in that regard, it's always useful to hear, well, what's happening on the other side of the lake? And then my last one is today, I had the honor of joining our city manager in our one-on-one meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. Let's jump over to Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On the 18th of January, I got to attend my first DEIC meeting, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, as our liaison from the council. Very honored to have the opportunity to work and go to those meetings representing us, and then bring back the wonderful work that they are doing to this body. They continue to have conversations around the trespassing ordinance that we asked them to take a look at, and they continue to do work there, and I would expect to have that come back to us in the relatively near term. I think one of the things that was, we talked a little bit about and we'll continue to talk about is kind of that flow of information back and forth between the commission and us as a council, so that we can ensure that we are, working together to move the city forward in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. So excited to support them in that, and excited to have them come and share some of the work that they're doing. I know Councilmember Woodard mentioned previously that they have been having conversations around a land acknowledgement. That is an ongoing conversation. I think they are looking at starting from a place of education, so that they make sure that we understand and have some kind of similar foundational understanding in what that is and what those look like, to ground those conversations in. They are also having all sorts of other interesting conversations. It was nice to see one of our commissioners come to our work session. Vanita came and talked about the Saturday event at the library, and so appreciated her coming and taking time to do that. And so thought that was great, and they have a bunch of really great stuff coming, and excited to be able to share that with all of you as they move through that body of work this year. On the January 25th, I had my city manager meeting. The 30th and 31st, again, we had council interviews, and I would just reiterate everything that Councilmember Woodard said. It was such a pleasure it is one of my favorite parts of this role, is the chance to meet, whether it is, this opportunity to fill this council position or to fill our boards and commissions opportunities. We have such amazing people who live in this community, and it is always such an incredible reminder when we get to have these conversations about how much people love this community and all of the skills and knowledge that folks in our community bring to the table. And I would just add, in addition to all of the boards and commissions opportunities that we have coming, and our city clerk just sent us kind of an idea of what that looks like. And so those are coming. We have openings, and would encourage all of the folks who applied and weren't selected through that process, as well as those who maybe weren't ready for that step but are interested in getting more involved in the city, to apply there. And I would also encourage you to look at other ways to plug into our community. I don't know how many times over the last several years we have heard desperate pleas from our nonprofits and our grassroots organizations that they don't have enough folks in order to successfully run their organizations. So whether your interest is supporting our garden club that does the beautiful plantings around our community, whether it is supporting our youth sports. We just had our Mountlake Terrace pony baseball not have a season this season because they didn't have enough board members. Like, there are so many opportunities to give back to our community and use those time and talents in ways that help to make this a better place to live. And I know that that was what every single one of the people that we spoke with wanted to do. And so hope that they all find a place that feels like a good place for them, and would encourage the rest of us to also look for ways that we can continue to expand our commitments here within our community, because there's a lot of organizations that need that support. On the first to Councilmember, I love going after Councilmember Woodard because it always makes things really easy. So I had a chance. I love when my day job and council kind of come together. So one of the great organizations I get to support in my day job is Seattle City Club, and so they, to Councilmember Woodard's report, they provide opportunity for really good civic engagement and conversation. They talk about dialogue across differences, and I just, every time I go to one of their events, I leave with an expanded kind of view of the world around us in our community. And so it was really exciting, though, to see a couple of our Snohomish County representatives, or representative and senator there, who shared a very heartfelt, experiences, kind of the connection of their lived experience and, the work that they do down in Olympia on behalf of their community. And I think one of the things that I took away is just how connected all of the issues that we navigate are, and the importance of remembering how connected all of the issues that we consider at any time are. And so it was a great opportunity, a great conversation. And I think anytime that we can, engage in or take part in conversations that expand our perspective is useful time. And that organization actually is led. I did not get a chance to watch the Black at Edmonds event over the weekend, but that organization is led by Alicia Crank, who many of us are familiar with as another Snohomish County resident. So Snohomish County, all sorts of good representation all over the place here in general, and for Black History Month, which is great. And then on the second, I attended our work session, and that completes my report. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Next, hear from Councilmember Sonmore.
Thank you. My liaison boards consist of the left one, lodging tax, parks, budget, RFA. And so I'll start with the RFA. We had our meeting last January, and just a few weeks ago, it seems. And our next meeting is next Tuesday. And then the lodging tax, you just appointed the board members on the consent calendar tonight. So thank you for that. And we have one new member on that. And the parks meeting will take place next week. And the budget meeting, we had one in January, and then there was one last week that Brian attended, Mayor Pro Tem Wall attended, excuse me. And then we have the RFA committee. I heard it's this Wednesday at 5:30? At 6. Thank you. And then also congratulations on the appointment of our newest council member. I hope you heard some honking near your home on Thursday night as I drove by. And just thought I'd wake up your neighbors a little bit and let them know. No, I'm just kidding. And then the last but not least is I need to schedule my next city manager meeting, but we did hold one last month. And that's all I have to report.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On January 27th, I met with our city manager on a monthly meeting. Then on the 30th and 31st, I also was involved in the the council members' interviews. And then on the 2nd, I attended our work study session. That's the end of my report.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Ryan. Councilmember Payne Donovan, would you have anything to report over the last week since you've been appointed?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, I also, it'll be real brief, but I joined Councilmember Woodard and members of the DEI Commission at the Black Lives Matter book reading sponsored by the school district and library system. And you'll recall that last Thursday you appointed me, and for that I'm very grateful. I think it's already been said, but I'll reiterate my appreciation for this privilege and honor to serve Mountlake Terrace and all of its residents, and take it very seriously. And I feel a little bit guilty for not being there in person with you, but I really appreciate the flexibility that this Zoom format allows. I think I will leave it there, but I would also just like to make a point for whether it's for the council's ears or for staff's ears, if there are opportunities to serve on other regional boards and commissions, et cetera, I would welcome those conversations. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Payne Donovan. We have a question, Councilmember Woodard.
Yeah, we don't usually question each other's reports, but if you wouldn't mind, Payne Donovan, or Councilmember Payne Donovan, first I apologize for not acknowledging you, but I put you on blast on email, or excuse me, on social media. But so people know that you're not just at home hanging out, would you mind sharing why you weren't able to make it, unless that's too sensitive?
No. Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. You may know that my day job keeps me in Olympia for most days of the week during the legislative session. And I had a late committee testimony and couldn't make it back safely in time to join you in the flesh. So I work for the Attorney General's office on their legislative team, working on a number of utilities and consumer protection issues this legislative session. And so I'm looking forward to us taking our field trip, as it were, to visit with our legislative delegation here in the 32nd Legislative District. And I do believe Andrew or someone have proposed some dates for that. So I think we can look forward to that in a couple of weeks. But I appreciate the prompt, Councilmember Woodard.
Very good. Thank you. All right, then for my report, starting with the January 12th, we had the Snohomish County Cities Dinner, where we had elections, and I was reelected to the Executive Board for Snohomish County Cities and Executive Board for Puget Sound Regional Council representing Snohomish County, and the Growth Management Policy Board representing Snohomish County. And Councilmember Murray was also elected to serve by my side on the Growth Management Policy Board. So thank you, and thank you for all of you that attended, were able to attend that. On the 25th, I had Snohomish County Tomorrow Steering Committee meeting where we reviewed sound transit, and as City Manager reported, we got an update on both the Linwood Link and the Everett Link. And there's some concerns about time frame and timing. So thank you for sharing that. And we are, all of us in Snohomish County are very concerned about that timeline slipping. And so anything we can be doing to step up and make sure Sound Transit is aware would be very helpful. So look forward to signing on to any kind of letters and other discussions with our delegation to help them take a forceful note to the full Sound Transit Board, how important it is for maintaining or getting service to Snohomish County in a timely manner. We also discussed our work plan for Snohomish County tomorrow. Then on the 26th, had the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board meeting. We discussed the regional equity strategy, incorporating equity into transportation and project selection, youth engagement, and data collection related to diversity. I do want to, by the way, commend Puget Sound Regional Council and the work that they've done and encourage our commission to reach out for. They have a plethora of data and resources and information that would be worth tapping. We also had the housing monitoring report and a survey. I think I reported briefly on some initial results, but I want to highlight that housing is now the #1 issue in the state. You know, before it's usually economy or taxes or transportation or the environment, but now it's housing. Housing is the #1 concern. Housing and costs and homelessness are the top 2 issues throughout Washington state. 77% say that rents are too high. 75% say that it costs too much to buy a home. 83% say more reasonably priced housing is needed in their communities. I could go on, but just some of the highlights. You know, there's a strong majority support more diverse and middle housing. People tie housing to community satisfaction. They believe that more housing, if done well, is likely to make their community better. Residents want, here's an important thing for us to note. Residents want government to do more. 83% say that government agencies should work together to address the need for housing. 64% say government agencies should do more to provide housing not being delivered by the market. By the way, these results are, I could go on, but I won't. What I'll try and do is share this information. I'll get this out to the city manager to share with you all. This is, by the way, this was a statewide survey done with Department of Commerce and Puget Sound Regional Council, so we had an oversample of the 4-county region with sufficient results to share about Snohomish County, broken down to Snohomish County and what Snohomish County residents want, to give us a better idea of how our community, our region feels. As you know, I'd love to go on and on about this subject, but I will reserve those comments to future times. We also had climate change implementation strategy discussion about GHG emissions and steps necessary to help meet those goals throughout the region. By the way, I'm still on the executive board of Puget Sound Regional Council. I probably got lost in translation there. We had a review of the Regional Transportation Plan Performance Dashboard and review the 2023 budget and work plan for that. We had, as has been discussed, the council interviews with some fantastic candidates that already discussed that on the 30th and 31st. And I do want to encourage those, first of all, back up, congratulations again to Councilmember Payne Donovan, and do want to encourage the others that applied to be there. There is, by the way, now a vacancy on the Planning Commission, and there will be others over the next couple of months that we need to fill as well. So do want to encourage you to get involved and apply for many of other positions available. On the 2nd, had the Puget Sound Regional Council Growth Board meeting where we discussed the Housing Public Opinion Survey again and the housing place typology. Reserve comments on those 2 items, well, the second item for a future meeting, because we're going to be spending a lot of time on housing at the Growth Management Policy Board meeting, considering that housing is the most important issue in the state and the region, and we need to address it, particularly with an opportunity through our comprehensive plan updates over the next couple of years, or coming up later next year, but there's a long, challenging process that we need to go through for figuring out how we're going to address housing right here in our community through the comprehensive plan update. On the 2nd, had the Finance Committee meeting where we discussed, I'm sorry, nope, that was postponed. So had a one-on-one conversation with the city manager about the finance issues, and that will be, you all will be having further discussions on that with your, during your one-on-ones. We had our council work session on the 2nd, met with the city manager earlier today, and that concludes my report. Finally. All right, with that, let's move into new business. Any new business to bring forward? Anybody? Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll keep it short because I know we have an executive session. We, for the last week and 2 weeks, really been honing in on this idea of quality of life, so I wanted to pause and give our Parks and Recs team a shout out. This Saturday, they have a new experience you can come and enjoy, cornhole. So that's also my way to put a challenge out there to anybody who's listening. If you need a clinic, I'm ready for you. All the details are on the Parks and Rec website, and I believe probably on our city site as well. I think I saw it only on our Parks and Rec site, but nonetheless, just wanted to applaud them because it's things like that that sound silly, but really make a chance for you to come and see who lives in your neighborhood, see who visits our neighborhoods, and in my case, get beat in cornhole. So want to make sure that that's out there, and folks, join us if you can.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Woodard. Councilmember Sonmore.
Just very quickly, speaking about parks and recs, I'm thinking of trees, but there is a program within our city where you can get a tree through our city. I just had a friend call me, and she called the city, and now she'll have a tree delivered. This summer, she has to make sure she gives it 20 gallons of water. Over the summertime, there's certain parameters, and you get to choose from a tree, and it's just a wonderful program. So I highly recommend that to people who want to add trees to their yard.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Sonmore. Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I will also keep it short. There was a good article, shout out to Everett Herald and local news in general, but they had a good article about kind of the potential for islands of populations in an emergency. And it made me think about the fact that we haven't really talked with dealing with the pandemic the last several years, we haven't talked a lot about like emergency management and because we contract with the county for that. So it would be great to invite them to come and talk to us a little bit about that partnership at some point, and maybe how our residents can be thinking about emergency preparedness from that perspective, given we've had so much focus on kind of public health over the last couple of years. It was a helpful reminder to me that maybe I needed to look at my emergency kit, and maybe I needed to be thinking about some of these things that I haven't dusted off in a while. And so I just thought that was a timely article, a good article, and maybe a good reminder for us that would be a good conversation to have.
So noted. Thank you, Councilmember Murray. Any other new business to come forward? If not, we have an executive session tonight. So we're going to have an executive session related to potential litigation as defined by RCW 4230-110, subsection 1. How long are we going to need? 30 minutes to start? Maybe we'll start with, how about we start with 20 minutes? We'll let you know if additional time is needed, but otherwise we plan on taking a couple-minute break before we start and come back at 9 p.m. Okay, calling this meeting back to order, and there is no action to be taken, so we are, I believe, done for the night. Let's adjourn. Good night.
Good job.